Imagine you had 2 days to live in paradise. What would you do? I'm an audiophile and also a music lover, so my version of paradise might look very different to yours, but thanks to Sennheiser Germany and to the exquisite local dealer AV store, I was able to live in my version of paradise for 2 days straight in the company of Sennheiser HE-1 legendary electrostatic headphone system. I might have a tired face right now because I had very little sleeping time, no time for that, because I wanted to hear their angelic voice from morning till dawn, and that is exactly what I did. So again, thank you Sennheiser and AV Store for making this happen. Big thumbs up to both of you. Alright everybody, let's check how heaven is made of and how the angels are singing. Trying to explain the build quality and the attention to the smallest details of the HE-1 would feel like describing the build quality and the attention to the smallest details of something like a Koenigsegg Chimera or Ferrari Daytona SP3. By the way, HE-1 is also handmade by a single person and he needs about 2 weeks to finish just a single set. I don't think I have the words to describe my first-hand experience with the HE-1, especially after pressing that big silver button. You might have those tingles, maybe goosebumps, maybe you'll be sweating like I'm doing right now. So HE-1 has that effect on you. The headphones themselves, they look gorgeous. The build quality is exquisite and my HD800S feel plasticky and out-fashioned near a pair of HE-1. A lot has been said already about the build quality and materials used in crafting the main amplifier and DAC, made out of a beautiful Carrara marble, so I'll stop here. I just want to point out a few things which less technical reviewers didn't quite understand. First of all, it uses one single ES9018 DAC chip, which is an 8-channel DAC chip, so it doesn't have 8 DAC chips inside, but just a single silicon, which has 8 channels. So basically working like an 8-core CPU, the working principle is very similar. That ES9018 can be used in mono mode, 1 channel, in stereo mode, 2 channels, in balanced mode, 4 channels, or all 8 channels can be used, basically paralleling 2 or 4 channels for a slightly lower noise floor and for a higher dynamic range, which is actually a very cool design decision. That is not something new, actually. A lot of DAC manufacturers are doing that today, even very affordable DACs are doing that, so it's not something new, but it's something very good because you are getting a maximum performance out of that silicon. This 9018 chip is slightly outdated by today's standards, but luckily you can use third-party DACs with the HE-1, and that is exactly what I did. I used 2 high-end DACs with the HE-1, and by the way, those sounded considerably better. Lastly, this is actually a hybrid amplifier, so the first stage, the preamplifier stage, are those 8 vacuum tubes, and the final stage, the amplifier stage, is sitting exactly in the headphones, and those are MOSFET transistors. That is actually a very cool idea because the signal path between the final transistors and the diaphragm is very short, so things like cable capacitance and resistance is no longer a concern, so that is thinking outside the box. Very cool design decision. Probably the most impressive thing about them is the distortion number sitting at 0.01% at 100 dB sound pressure level, which is actually mind-boggling. Just to put it into perspective, audiophile-grade dynamic and planar headphones have those numbers by about 100 to 1000 times higher, so again 0.01% at 100 dB, which is very loud, is actually very impressive. I wanted to squeeze maximum performance out of this set, so plugging a USB cable into my PC and then into HE-1 was out of the question. Please remember my nickname. And a minute later I was already connecting 2 high-end streamers and 2 high-end DACs, so in truth I used only the amplifier stage of HE-1 and the headphones themselves for maximum performance. When something truly outstanding lands at the Soundnews HQ, then I'll be calling out my closest friends for a listen, and this time around we had quite a gathering, and we were able to test them with 5 pairs of well-trained ears. We also tried different streamers, different DACs. We also compared them with an equally impressive headphone setup, which by the way costs almost as much as HE-1, and that comparison will be coming at the end of this video. Also, I want to mention that this is not my first experience with HE-1, this is my fourth experience, and for 2 times I tried them for 2 days straight, so I believe I formed a very solid opinion about the HE-1. Sound-wise, forget everything you know about dynamic, planar and electrostatic headphones, because these will be providing you a very different, entirely new experience. If you are coming from electrostatic headphones like COS, like HE-1s, like stacks, the very first thing you'll observe is the bass, which is considerably stronger, it goes lower, quantity and quality-wise is just much better. Actually, one of the few reasons why I don't own an electrostatic system is because I really don't like the way those are rendering the bass, quality and quantity-wise. Stack's X9000 is actually very impressive in the bass, but still HE-1 is better when delivering those thunder-like bass notes. Very impressive with rock and electronica tunes, which is actually a big surprise for me. Everything else that has to do with frequency response, like the mid-range, like the treble, is done in the most beautiful way because they cover it fully. Secondly, things like detail retrieval, transparency, transit response, natural decay of the notes, those are pretty much redundant with HE-1. There is as much detail retrieval as you can possibly desire, the most natural decay of the notes and the fastest start and stop of the drivers. But what's interesting is that you'll be not thinking about their technical performance while listening to music. You'll be thinking about how natural everything is pouring, how lifelike everything sounds, how easy it is to zoom in and zoom out on those tiny small things happening in the background. It's like you have the best lens on your camera and you're just locking on those sounds very easily. HE-1 also have the absolute best transparency, very liquid sounding at the same time, so the music is really pouring. You have this amazing texture, which is very unusual for electrostatic headphones, because usually they don't sound so meaty and full-bodied and lifelike, but HE-1 are very different. While they don't have really the widest or the tallest soundstage, what was really amazing on HE-1 was actually their depth, their note separation, the layering, like you switched from a 2D image to a 3D IMAX experience for your ears. In this regard, these are very impressive. Even poor mastered music sounded like a remastered version by the remaster gods themselves. I was actually quite surprised because I listened to a lot of underground music, which is not so well recorded, and everything was so engaging, so easy to listen to, so natural and lifelike, which is actually a big surprise because I was expecting a very clinical and hard to digest sound, but that was not the case with HE-1. Every time I put them on, I feel that the microphone is disappearing and I'm becoming that microphone, and everything is actually surrounding my head. I am part of that experience, I am part of that music making in a way. Also a very weird feeling, it's not I'm listening to some records which happened in the past, but if like those musicians are playing right now just for me in the comfort of my home. A very unusual feeling, but everything sounds so tactile and so real. It feels like everything is in real time, happening right now, like you are sitting in a live concert. That is exactly how HE-1 are sounding. It felt like teleporting to a live concert and then Scotty was beaming me down at my home, but the lived experience was considerably stronger compared to what I was getting from a live concert. HE-1 will also make you very emotional, so crying, smiling or exclaiming loudly or clapping your hands in the middle of the night is actually something very usual to do with the HE-1. Actually, I was listening in my office in the middle of the night and I was exclaiming loudly and I was crying, and my son came over and asked me why I'm crying because he never saw me like that, and it was quite a challenge explaining him why that happened. While this is a soulless looking setup, it's made out of cold materials, it will make you warm inside, it will awake plenty of memories, and all kinds of emotions. You will start seeing the colors of your music, all kinds of stuff that a regular headphone setup won't usually do. You probably know me by now. I ditched all those perfect measuring gear with less than perfect measuring gear that will awake emotions, that will make me powerful, that will make me enjoy my tunes. And I'm very happy that Sennheiser went with the same working principles, with the same, sound experiences with HE-1, and it aligns with what I'm chasing. Listening to all musical genres, starting with classical and finishing with some aggressive stuff and to everything in between, I can say that HE-1 works with everything except for metal tunes, something that I would never put on HE-1. Those worked okay with metal tunes, but not really impressive, so please don't use them with that. And about that comparison, about the HE-1 versus HE-1 Susvara put on some high-end headphone setup, which by the way costs almost as much as the HE-1, I'll say that HE-1 will be offering you the absolute best detail retrieval, transparency, depth, holography, texture, liquidity, lifelike timbre, basically a very real representation of my music. And with the HE-1 Susvara put on that legendary sounding setup, you are getting nicer dynamics, a much better punch in the low end. The sound gets physical, more engaging at the cost of being less transparent and less magical sounding. A well-driven HE-1 Susvara setup will be offering you about 85, maybe 90% of that HE-1 experience. And if I'm removing all those high-end streamers and high-end DACs, then Susvara put on that legendary stack will be offering you around 90, maybe 92% of the stock HE-1 experience. In conclusion, if you have the money for the HE-1, then you surely have the money for a high-end streamer and for a high-end DAC, and that is exactly what I would do with the HE-1. I'm not sure why Sennheiser slightly lowers the voltage intake of the analog inputs, because with an external DAC the volume gets lower, the headroom is lower, but that slight plasticky, metallic and 2D sound of the stock DAC section would be no more, so still an external DAC will sound better. As for me, I was for about 90% sure that when I'll retire in 20 years or God knows where, I'll be getting a pair of HE-1 and move to the mountains and just enjoy the rest of my life with a set of HE-1. But right now, after hearing them for 4 times, that probability is not as high because I'm still highly enjoying my headphone setup. However, HE-1 system is still the very best headphone system that I have ever tried in my life, and thinking about if HE-1 is worth it or not is really a dumb question, because this is really a timeless art piece. This is a statement. This is something else. And I'm really glad that such exotic products exist not only in the car world, but also in the audio world. So thank you, Sennheiser, for having the vision and the will to make it happen. That's all for now. Thank you guys for watching. Please consider subscribing if you like this video. Headphone related content will be coming very, very soon, including some high-end stuff, so press that red alert button. My name is Sando. I'll see you very soon. Keep rocking.